Not yet.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, yes.
I
Now
think
I
finally,
see. Yes,
can you, I apologize, I missed the first part when I
it's
say
okay.
that the
You were
ocean is
mentioning, yeah,
connecting us. Yeah, you're saying La Mare means the Mediterranean Sea only.
yeah. Il mare for Italians, but I believe also for all the people like Greek people that lives within the Mediterranean area. We all mean sea and not the ocean,
Got it.
you know? So it's funny that you start mentioning the ocean because I just came back from Brazil. Um, and in Brazil, I was part of this 1 week retreat where we did like shamanic ceremonies with sacred plants. And one of the aspects was the involvement of chants. And these chants were dedicated and inspired and channeled for actual gods. But for example, the goddess of the ocean, they call it Yemanja, and they have all sorts of chanting and rhythm that they play. And so it was really beautiful to go down really in the root of the word ocean, in this case water, and go in the roots of a very ancient culture transmitted, from generation to generation. And I felt like how precious is this value that most of Western societies, just to draw a general line, have lost contact.
Yes. And I think we will talk more about the ocean later on because to me, um, ocean and sea is a source of nourishment. And there are certain people with certain nature in my training that are particularly drawn to the ocean, to its qualities and nature. And it just happened to be that I noticed both your father and you um, mention ocean in your songs quite a bit, and that you both love ocean, and I myself also. And is yeah. And as you know, I'm a fan of your father's music, and then follow your stories, and I was really touched and moved, inspired by the most recent podcast you did with Luca, One More Time. And there was a lot of very inspiring information about your personal journey of healing, and your view of spirituality. That was very interesting to me. And you touched upon them very, a little in that interview. And I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in hearing more about that. So that's why this call is so precious. And I thank you in advance for sharing in advance. And also, we talk about shamanic and indigenous practice just now. One important element of indigenous healing, wellness, spirituality practice is storytelling. And by
Yes.
yes, by sharing stories, people pass on from generation to generation, from people to people, and people feel inspired, and it's part of the healing process. Because in indigenous practice, as you know, which I believe, um, there's no separation of spirituality, mind from the body. There's no separation from personal to environment and to other people around us. It's a holistic practice. It always have a somatic element to it, like movement, singing, dancing, and then also storytelling is a very important element of indigenous practice. And I'm just very thankful for the opportunity to hear your personal journey today. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I have your permission to record and then, you know, to share
Yes.
some
Yes,
useful
of course.
information. Thank you. Why don't, if you don't mind, sorry for bringing you back into the last moments of your father's passing again.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there were painful moments. Um,
Well, um, so I want to give this perspective on this surely sad day somehow. But I think there is a interesting concept which refer to collateral beauty, and collateral beauty is everything positive that is actually the outcome of something impactful and painful. So basically, the results of an accident or a loss. There are so many beautiful things that when we are drowning in sorrow and pain, we don't necessarily realize they are around us already. So my perspective on the last moments of his life are really about gratitude for many reasons. But the most important is the gratitude towards my own healing journey that started, 10 years ago, something like this, when I first started, like getting hypnotized in regressive hypnosis and all sorts of practices. But these two bring into my own reality the fact that all these tools and journeys and practices and sessions took me to a place where I was able to feel and not only to think, to feel that there is no actual death of the soul, of the pure essence that defines who we truly are beyond our physical appearance. So, in the moment of my father passing away, of course, I wasn't radiant nor happy, but inside me there was a profound peace and harmony because I felt like that the actual last breath that he took was a liberation and not like a goodbye forever. I will never see you again. So I actually, for, and I'm sure my father would laugh about this joke that I actually sometimes feel him closer now that he's not physically anymore here, that there are not so many anymore restriction and restraints in terms of logistic of life, I would call it.
that's so beautiful.
So. So going back to your question, but even before that, you were talking about my own journey of healing and why basically there was something that attracted you in that interview in terms of holistic practices and healing in general. Uh, when you were talking, I had these two main inputs. One is the fact that there are two aspects. One is correlations and what we are able to see and look for, which I mean, most of the time we want to get rid of the consequences without having to carry the burden of of taking responsibility of the roots causes causing these consequences. So today, for example, I had a professional exchange in practice with a chiropractor, and osteopath. And from the way my body was standing, he ended up telling me that my liver was like the ligaments that keep the liver in position were um, contracted, and that had a repercussion on my diaphragm and then through various nerves. And he spotted several pain points, and I was mesmerized by the fact that, for example, when he was telling me put your hand on your liver, and he was doing this test of my um, arm mobility. So when I was deactivating, in energetically speaking, the lever, then my articulation wasn't blocked and it would go all the way down. If I wouldn't do that, this lever tension would cause all kinds of restriction in my mobility of the shoulder, which wasn't really the reason why all this was happening. So going back to the point, you may go to a physiotherapist or to someone because you think that the problem is the shoulder,
Yeah.
when the actual starting cause is in the liver. And then you can go even deeper, investigating according to the various sources and, like cultures, and it's always a mixture of elements. You can go back to what influenced the liver to create this kind of tension. Was it trauma? Was it food? Was it lifestyle?
Was it
Like,
alcohol? Was it cannabis?
yes, yes, many, many things. So the first part of healing, I believe it only makes sense nowadays with so many resources and the possibility of contaminating in a virtuous way,
Yeah.
like we are doing, for example, right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense to look at healing from a one-sided perspective. That's what I come to realize. Then, of course, this doesn't at all mean that I want to intrude in a much more surgical type of health. Like I'm not saying that if you have a cancer and you need to get rid of it, like with surgery, you pray the divine intelligence and it will go away. I'm not even say the contrary, because what I, in my personal journey, have witnessed, there are cases of, like unexplicable from the logical point of view, healing journeys in people that also doctors say, I don't really know what's going on here.
There are a
You know?
lot of unknown elements in even on biomedicine side. Um,
And I want to finish this by saying that this was the first point, correlation. Second point is, I believe that who choose to um, go through this path of facilitation, of healing, or of being at service to humanity, um, at some point in life, there must be like a big necessity to bloom, to be seen, and therefore many years before of I'm not seen, I'm invisible, I don't have my own place on earth, I suffer. So I think in order to be supporting other people suffering and pain, it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily try each of every possible pain or disease, but the condition of having to ask for help, the condition of feeling powerless, the condition of not knowing how it's going to be, and then knowing at the end that you went through it, you were brave, but you know it at the end. So I
One
think these two aspects need to be um, incarnated within the same person that does service to like heal and support, you know.
in Chinese, we have a saying, when the learner is ready, the teacher will appear. And there are so many different sayings in different cultures uh, for seeking and learning and constant
Yeah.
growth. Yeah. And one thing that really was interesting to me in your last interview with Luca, first of all, it was very impressive that two men sit together and talk about emotions only for 2 hours. That itself was extremely exceptional to me.
Mhm.
And you called it a 2 hour of pure energy. And I keep bringing it back to that interview is because that created a lot of ideas and questions for me. That's why I keep going back to that interview. Um, so one thing I want to ask you in that interview, you mentioned that when your father became a TV personality, his creativity stopped. And my question, more of a challenge for you, is that could it be that he found connecting with people, just like what you're doing today, became so much more meaningful to him that winning that next song contest at the Sanremo was no longer interesting to him?
Um, so it's a good point, but I want to also add something because my uh, interpretation of creativity and how I measure it is not really about how many prizes you win or
Well, I think I lost you there. The
yeah, back there,
There
back
you go.
there.
Internet issue. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I was saying that when I talked about the creativity stopping after TV and whatsoever, um, I'm not saying that since he didn't win prizes or Sanremo like I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the a period of his life where he would write songs that still today are iconic. And for some reason, I saw a correlation between him starting to dedicate his time and attention and energy to a fast communication, to an impactful leadership and charisma and A-type character, which is more about doing than embracing and hearing and then expressing.
So
So
Mhm. What I
so
was
you get
trying to say, I think, is that in different period of a person's life, there are different things that are more important to them that give them balance. I was more challenging the idea that that instant connection with people was very, very satisfying to him. That could be. He became a diplomat. He became the diplomat of Italy, going around the world singing his love songs, especially giving love to the Eastern Bloc countries. And, being a child growing up in the East post-Cold War, I
Mhm.
understand how much love songs were was needed in my culture growing up. And I think it was very admirable and fascinating for me to see him really literally became a diplomat for Italian culture and for love
Yeah,
and trying to
yeah,
even,
that's for sure.
yeah,
Sorry?
no, I mean, even trying to help stop the war between Ukraine and Russia at the end, and it was all fascinating. But let me move on to back to the interview, and I got some comment from the internet about your last interview. Again, the very inspiring interview to a lot of people, and I want to read them to you. And I hope by hearing them, I'm curious what type of energy that it creates in you. So people say, so these are some comments. Sublime Italian language,
Mm.
great maturity, expository delicacy in the use of language, master of penetrating vocabulary. These are some of the translation from Italian language, of course,
Yeah,
and unimaginable depth, gifted with rare sensitivity and emotional intelligence. The thought is surgical, a pure soul, almost done. A person of unsettling depth, unique human beauty, the most beautiful harmony you father ever created. You are your father's most beautiful son. How do you feel about those comments?
um, well, it depends because I read them all, um, and I was a little afraid to do so when the interview came out. But then after a few weeks, I did read every single comment, and I was like positively invested by this wave of love and recognition and esteem and many things. So it is very beautiful. So I am grateful for all of those comments. Um, However, I want to also add the fact that the instant gratification that a positive feedback gives you lasts few seconds. So my answer to that is um, a society that chase recognition, fame, positive comments, being a persona is actually chasing something like the horizon that is not catchable. And so if you give too much credit to to these comments, not credit, if you give too much importance,
For attention, yes.
yeah, I mean what they and what you saw in that particular interview is sure a pure and truth representation of my story, but it's also my very best condition. I love Luca. I loved being there. I was in a endorphin uh, release, like bomb probably for 2 hours. And I was totally, I mean, lucid. I'm saying just like the excitement of being there and the focus. So this means we should all not believe too much that we identify with what people and what we even perceive of ourselves, because there is a much deeper layer that doesn't really care or is not really involved in any of this, like any ego, any depression. It's beyond.
The reason why, of course, you know, and I know that they were not all positive comments. And the reason why I stay on the positive was because there's a vibration that the positive energy you get from this that's taking you to a place where you know what I mean, that is more inspiring to hopefully for you, um, for me, seeing those comments that there are people actually echo how I feel about your interview. And it's a sense of connection with other people, that there are people who are thinking in a common way that vibrate through the universe. And
Absolutely.
yes, and to be completely honest, I think some of the Italian, a part of the Italian public, or even your father's global fan base, is just not ready to hear some of the content that you shared, because
Yeah, yeah, sure.
they're still mourning the loss of him, and
Yeah,
they want to believe that this perfect image that their hero has in their
yeah,
mind.
of course.
So in that last moment of your papa's life, you mentioned a Hawaiian indigenous practice, Ho'oponopono,
Yeah,
and do you feel that when you love one tradition, do you just love all indigenous healing traditions? Because that certainly is the case for me. The reason why I have to mention the importance of the indigenous traditions is because they're fastly disappearing. And as you know, I was in Mexico recently while you were in Brazil. Um, I realized there were not a lot of people taking siesta anymore. That's one example of fastly disappearing tradition. Did you notice
yeah.
something in Brazil as well?
I don't have a deep knowledge. I didn't have a deep knowledge of Brazil as it was to compare it to what I witnessed. So for Brazil, I don't really know.
Yeah, this is
I haven't noticed.
yeah. I mean, just the fact that you personally are also interested in this, help the tradition stay alive. Um, so I thank you for that. Um, you mentioned closing of circles in the sense of completion. Um, in the hospital in the last moment of
Yeah,
Papa's life. And that also is something that really fascinated me. And in my tradition, there were scientists have done studies in Asia, um, which they found that qi, our vital life force, travel in our body and in the universe in a spiral fashion. And it was just a very true, honest description of your emotion at the time and your spirituality when you were seeing circles of completion. And I relate to that type of energetic. Can you go
yeah.
in a little bit? I mean, you were like doing a painting as you go describing that last few moments. Um, of your time together. What's particularly touching to me was that you were going into a place of new beginning spiral from his last moment to a new beginning. When rest of the people arrived, somehow interrupted that journey to a new beginning, and then they saw the end, but you already moved on and saw the beginning. Um,
Well, I also saw the end, but when it arrived, that was when my shift was from pain to liberation and inner peace and love. And the other people's shift was more about grief and desperation. So this is what comes to mind when you talk about this.
Because you were on a different journey. Your mind were on a different journey. So life was defined by breath, you were saying. And can you explain more about what you realized?
Uh, hmm. Actually, it was a very simple thought. Like the vital signals that nowadays machines in the hospital gives you, they can stay in a small monitor like this, and they are about the saturation of oxygen in the blood. They are about the heartbeats, and then there is a breath that influence the previous two.
Yeah.
So in the very last moment, you come to realize that um, it's really a delicate equilibrium being alive. And the very foundations are breath, like heart, that's it.
Yeah.
And of course, like functioning of the brain and stuff. But I mean, what truly makes you alive is the fact that you breathe and that your heartbeat, so,
Yep.
and this, I think, like facing a person that you love, life ending in front of you, um, it's a really transformational experience that, of course, I don't wish nor advise to anyone. It's just that life presented me with this opportunity in a way, and yeah, things followed in unpredictable ways because then, as you know, I changed my working path into something completely different, and
Yep.
so that's the collateral beauty I was referring to before.
Yeah. You had that realization of breath, how important it is. Um, on the moving on to, in a very similar fashion, you painted a picture of your mind so vividly that I could almost see you like painting for some reason when I hear you were talking about how your mindset changed on the funeral day. Um, I watched the video and at the beginning, you were telling the journalist to back off outside the church. It was really, not many people have to experience that type of intensity of emotion like how you experienced that day. As I always call you like a super athlete, a high performance athlete, because your mind was pushed to a limit and how you break through that limit and then start merging boundary with people from telling the journalist to back off at the beginning, and then you were bothered. There was agitation. I could even use the word anger at the beginning, how they were standing
Yeah.
between you in a coffin. And then to the moment how you realize your papa's presence was there and how he would handle the situation, and then how you transformed your mind into love and peace. And I just want to hear more about how that transformation happened. It was a beautiful story.
Well, I thought that day that it was all about sadness and grief and tears. No? Banana. I have my dog, sorry, here. Um, But what surprised me was that when all what surprised me was that going through all these intrusions and stupid questions from the media and hypocrisy of people that I don't know, just like using that spotlight to be in the TV news, like it wasn't just the funeral of my father, it was the funeral of a public persona. So you have to put on top all this pressure that usually and luckily there is no. And yeah, finding that there is no really like, as we often say, like you reach the bottom, you touch the bottom, no? Um, because after the bottom there is like the other side of the of the earth, and you
Spirals.
trespass somehow. Uh, so when people would, try to, even people that like complete strangers, but they participated at the funeral, and they would try to talk to me or to touch me or to do a photo or to tell me why they were here, that why they were there. Mm, the first reaction would have been, come on, like, leave me alone. Like, don't you see I'm in pain? But that's when I used the words that I felt guided and supported by my father, because instead of closing down and getting annoyed, I would naturally tend to go towards the people that showed me like the interest or intention even. And I would just donate my whole presence, like without, I don't know, like telling them, okay, okay, let's do the photo, but I'm in a rush, or, like I would try to spend some time with them. Um, and not even in an autopilot mode. I was really there. I was really present. And so I was really surprised by realizing how much patience, which I usually don't have, which we can also call like maybe like compassion and love for people. I understood that it was that day wasn't the funeral only, in brackets, of my father, but it was much more. So in the eyes of in the eyes of those people crying, I would recognize the same pain. So that kept me connected to not wanting to leave that chapter forever as fast as possible. But when I talk about this, I feel like I've been really brave to to hold space for so much, so much, you know.
Yeah. It to me, you demonstrated a very trained mind. It appears, I mean, I want to ask the question, you've been practicing meditation long before that moment, because not everybody can turn around in a situation like that. It's a very intense. moment. That's why I asked the question because I wonder if you have been training, doing mind training, meditation, or any source of other type of mind training before that point.
No, so I want to specify this because there is a subtle difference between meditation, which is more the state that after my practice a person enjoy, and myself when I do it, and breath work. Because what I've been doing on occasion, it was meditation. Sometime I was always interested in meditation, but I wasn't disciplined enough to keep going and to become, like to master it. Um, until after the my father passing away, I found, a guided breathwork session on YouTube, which
Yes.
then gave me the ignition to realize how important would become this tool in my life and shaping my working life nowadays.
Yeah, that's where I want to go next. Is the picture of your father's last breath and you finding your new breathing practice was another very beautiful moment. Um, before I move on, as a mother, I just have to ask, how's your mama doing and how did she feel how you did in that interview? I'm sure she watched it and I'm sure she's very proud of you. I hope you know what you're doing today and how you handle the transition.
Yeah, she's very proud, and the interview was tough for her at the beginning because the reconstruction that I did brought back to her awareness many memories that she eventually have modified a long time to make them fit better in her own reconstruction of the past. So I believe it was, no, I believe, I am sure that it was very tough because we almost had an argument right after, but I accepted her, state of mind and all the things she basically expressed. But I also tried afterwards to illuminate a direction through which she could also read it and see it. And through that lens, that was also authentic to her, not nothing imposed. She realized that it was a very beautiful gift, and she's very proud. And now she sent it to friends and family, so she's very proud.
That's great. Did you practice breath work on her? Have you ever done that?
Yes, yes. Not as many times as I do with my clients nowadays, because like at the end, very often who practice something in his own inner circle, he doesn't do it often. Like it's just maybe uh, something that becomes more work related. Then, of course, there are situations in which we do it, and uh, I look forward to it.
I especially she gave you a name of after the Greek goddess Victory. I really
Yeah,
think I just hope that she finds that you are a true victory for where you are today, knowing the type of childhood that you had. No one knew that intimately to the level that she did. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, and in also you mentioned in that interview your childhood experience give you a have you lost a sense of independence and even losing your voice? Do you find that in the breath work that you're doing today? So first of all, I just want to mention, like you found the breath work video on YouTube. Somehow the universe unknown forces directed you to this
Yeah.
breathing work that you start taking on. Do you feel after you start taking on that work that you start finding your sense of independence back again and your voice back again?
Yeah, I think my bottom line story is being recognized, be seen, um, and I also feel like I chose my own path in being seen, by which I mean going after I'm not going after fame, which I mean, if it will happen to a certain degree, I mean, it's just the consequence of how good I do what I do. But yeah, it's definitely not a priority.
Yeah, I'm not really referring to fame, but in a way that as a person who felt that he lost his voice is very important, whether you do professional singing or not. That actually takes me to my other question is that you do have a beautiful voice, and um, I want to go back to Hallelujah that you did
Mm.
2017 in Israel, Tel Aviv. You were on the stage with your father together. I watched that. It was, I believe you have a very beautiful voice. And you play guitar both ways. Did you really? Do you?
No, 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 no,
Oh,
no,
okay.
just a regular, just a
Oh,
regular.
okay. So, I know there are many people ask you about professional singing, and I know you have told many times people that I'm not doing it professionally. My interest and question is more towards what type of creative energy do you still cultivate in you to have your energy flow, which I think creativity is very important to give balance to a person. So art to me create a way of visualization. Visualization creates make your dream come true. So really doing art help
Yeah,
manifest your dream. Um, what type of
yeah. In my case, saying that music is not like a professional um, part of my life. It was more of a protection layer against, failure or unmatched expectations or comparisons in this sort of way. But nowadays, with my book coming out, in my book there are songs for every chapter that
yes,
you can have access to by scanning the QR code. So at the end of every chapter, you have the possibility, if you're curious, to just expand the perspective on that particular period or anecdote that I chose to then sing in my own terms. So this is the first time I try to approach it in a professional way, and is actually um, beautifully, like done and already uploaded in my website, which will be available like in the second half of May when the book comes out. I will also have my website online. Um, so yeah.
congratulations. That's so great. I heard about the book. Congratulations.
Yeah, I think this is about what you were mentioning before about getting back our own voice, which um, which is more the right to speak um, what comes in between your heart and mind, because it's always like a balance of elements, and when you find that particular point that satisfy both maybe the ambition but also how it makes you feel, then you feel free to express it, whatever it may be, like it doesn't need to be a song. It can be a project, it can be an activity, it
Yes,
can be your own way of living life.
exactly.
This is what I feel like my journey is about with. voice and like these interviews. Yeah,
That's I
it's a
know.
form of healing, as you know, like sound is voice is nothing but sound,
Yeah.
and sound is waves. So
And also action. And as far as I know, you always have a really strong voice in our interaction. So, and I feel like this work is also um, really hopefully help you find your voice and that you find your voice is getting stronger and stronger as it goes.
yeah,
And so I want to mention a few words that of quality that you that I observed in that interview with Luca. Um, I sense resilience, courage, vision, leadership, um, warmth, love, compassion, inspiration. I think when a person is in balance energetically, the best of a person's nature comes out. And I hope your breath will continue to help you find balance and that they're of course not limited to these qualities. Um, you mentioned one way that you might lose balance is that you find receiving can be difficult. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like giving is
yeah,
easier than receiving for you.
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's just about me. I think it's very common to be focusing on when when you when you, for example, think about the generosity. Most of the time is about giving, how much you give, how often, uh, on what you give, like the actual. But I believe that also receiving with acknowledgement and appreciation, gratitude is a gift, is an act of generosity. Because when someone gives you a compliment or stop you to maybe share something positive with you, then it's like the presence of you being there listening to him. It's already like it means that you receive, and you also give this act of generosity, sharing your time truly, and this is on in the work that you do. How comfortable are you when clients pay you? You know, how comfortable you are when your partner wants to offer you comfort and like support. How open is
Yeah.
your heart?
Yes.
This is my interpretation of receiving. How open is your heart?